Welcome to the Cape Elizabeth School Board regular business meeting on Tuesday, November 8th, 2016. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1 on tonight's agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none. Item 2, approval of school board minutes. May I have a motion, please?
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes as listed under 2A through D.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item 3, comments by student representatives. They're home watching TV, desperately waiting for these election results. Item 4, comments from public on agenda items. Seeing none. They're all home desperately watching. And item 5, communications. At this time, we would like to recognize that we have a departing school board member. We are going to recognize him yet again at the following workshop, but if people would like to say a few words on camera, nice words.
There's only nice words
Nice.
to be said. So I'll go first. Michael, I have followed your shoes in the finance chair position, and I just admire all of the incredible work that you have done to set us up for future success. Following in your shoes, you've made it easy. But not only that, but you are just so perceptive in understanding what we need as a board to move forward and move things forward, and the information and the background and the history and the whys. And you've always been an incredible resource, and I, for one, am going to really miss your insights.
Thank you.
Don't go far. Have you on speed dial?
Michael, 3 years ago, right around this night, it was we spent most of the day together campaigning, or polling, not campaigning, but whatever, standing at the polls. And I was struck then, I mean, I already knew, but I was struck then how calm you were and how, like, just basically unflappable you seemed. And I've become even more impressed with that over the past 3 years. You're just, you're a rock. And I am so grateful to your 6 years of service. Having spent 3, I know how much that takes and the toll it takes on not only you personally, but also on your family. And I want to thank you for your integrity and your financial brain, because that's very helpful for me. And that was dumb. But anyway, thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to miss you a lot.
I would just add, I've only worked with you for 2 years, Michael, but I'm just struck by how smart you are. We have discussions, you bring up points that are elusive to the rest of us. I'm just really impressed with that, and I know you've been hugely helpful to Joanna in her new role as finance chair last year, and so that was a great handoff. But I also want to make note of just how kind you are. When we talk about kids, when we talk about teachers, you're always looking for the kind thing the board should be doing, and I really have appreciated that anchor you bring to those discussions. And also, as a newbie on the board 2 years ago, you really took time to call me up once in a while, check in, answer questions, how you doing? I really, really appreciated that. So I'm sad to see you go off, but 6 years is a long time on this board, so thank you from my time I've had with you.
So I'd just like to add, and I think that Cape Elizabeth is losing a really wonderful public servant, and you will really be sorely missed. The wisdom and thoughtfulness and carefulness and kindness that you've brought to the position has been admirable. And it's like when you see a sailboat sailing smoothly along, what you don't see is that keel underneath that keeps it steady and moving on course, and you have been that keel in many cases, and it's been really valued. A lot of what you have done has been not seen, but it's been really, really important. The work you've done on the finances and the capital improvements and other things have put us in a position to really move forward on a solid basis, and we really, really appreciate it, and you will really be missed. Thank you.
So Michael, I've only had the chance to work with you for 1 year now, but much like what Barbara said, one of the things that has struck me is your kindness, how you immediately reached out to me, offered your support and your help as I was new to the board, and that meant a lot to me, and still means a lot to me. And as I've progressed through this first year and into this second year as a board member, again, your integrity and your wisdom and your ability to see points that are not being discussed and help us see things from a new and fresh angle that is very practical and important. Instead of being stuck in the weeds, you bring us back up to reality a lot. So I really appreciate that, and I've learned a lot watching you, listening to you, and I'm grateful for the 6 years that you have contributed to this board and this community. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just going to say a few words and save the rest for the real last meeting. But Michael, I feel like you've seen this school board through some challenging times, and some of those times you've had to carry a heavy burden. You've gone above and beyond for years, and I know, again, the toll that that can take on your professional and your family life. And that just speaks to your incredible dedication to the children in the school district. I too am impressed by your wisdom and your sensitivity to the people in the room and the people that are not in the room. You're thoughtful, you bring focus to this work, you bring pragmatism, and I am incredibly grateful for your 6 years of dedicated service to our school district. Thank you.
My last meeting, I told my kids I would do a speech for them on TV, so here we go. Thank you for those kind words. If you would indulge me for a minute or two, I would like to share a few thoughts and pass along some thank yous. For starters, I have thoroughly enjoyed serving on the school board. Contrary to popular belief, it is not a thankless job. Where else can you debate the merits of cheesy bread, self-directed learning, and the appropriate use of an undesignated fund balance all in one day? During the past 6 years, I've received much, much more than I've given. I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to serve my community and be surrounded by so many amazing people. First and foremost, I would like to thank my family, my wife, Gwen, and 3 children, who are always supportive, forgiving, and even enthusiastic about me serving on the school board. As other board members can appreciate, challenging, stressful school decisions and events are often harder for your family to weather than yourself. I'm very thankful to have such a loving, supportive family. I would like to thank the present school board members and all the previous members with whom I've served. I love your passion for education, your commitment to your community and children, and your willingness to tackle challenging, often emotional issues. Thank you to past school board members Mary, John, Kate, Kathy, David, and Kim. Mary, we are especially rooting for you these days. I would like to thank the teachers, business office staff, ed techs, food service staff, custodial facilities and maintenance staff, administrative support staff, and the administrators and volunteers for their tireless effort and commitment to each and every child. And I'm especially thankful for the patience and kindness they showed to me. Thank you, Howard, Meredith, Andrea, Jeff, Nate, Mike, Doug, Jeff, Greg, Pauline, Kelly, Peter, Teresa, Jessica, Kathy, Noel, and Kathy for your service and dedication to your schools. Thank you for the town council and staff for your service. I would like to thank the community in particular the taxpayers who do not have children in the schools. Thank you for supporting the schools. It's wonderful to live in a community that truly values education and knows how liberating and life-changing a solid education can be. To the present board, Elizabeth, Joe, John, Heather, Barbara, and Susanna, please remember that you will never have all the information you want, You will never have 100% buy-in or agreement from all stakeholders on any issue. There's always a squeaky wheel. Change and uncertainty are the norm, not the exception in schools and in life in general. And things in the schools are never as bad nor as good as they seem. My advice, always put people first. Have fun, because this can be hard work. Trust your instincts and keep things in perspective. These aren't life or death issues. Most importantly, sleep well knowing that the community values your leadership and judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to item B, superintendent search. I was just going to say a few words. Earlier, I guess it was in October now, since we're not too far into November, the school board sent out a letter notifying the community about where we were in the process of our superintendent search. And I'm not going to reread that letter to everybody. There is a link to it on the district website, however. What I would like to just reemphasize is that in order for us to have an effective, transparent search with a very high degree of community input, and I define community really as stakeholders, which are students, teaching staff, administrators, everybody involved in the schools, as well as parents and community members. Because we really value that high degree of input, we're going to use essentially the same process with just a few tweaks. As I talked about in the letter, we're going to have an advisory screening committee again, and the membership will include school board members, teaching staff, administrators, parents, and community members, and the exact makeup is listed in that letter. We will again have an interview committee that is comprised of the entire board with some representation of administrators and teaching staff. We are going to add this time around a visiting team, which will go and visit the districts of our finalists, and that group is deliberately small. For one reason, we don't want to overwhelm the district that we're visiting, and also to be able to really talk to each other and maybe even fit into a single vehicle. That group will include a couple of school board members and administrators and teachers. Wider community involvement will stay the same when we have a finalist or finalists visit our district. Just like last time, the finalist or finalists will visit with all stakeholders in town, including town councilors and central office staff, community members, parents, teachers, students. We got feedback and had FaceTime with just everybody, and we look forward to doing that again. Soon, we will be opening the application process, mid-November, and that will last. We will keep the application open until the first week of January, and we're looking at a late March hire. So stay tuned. We will give more information soon and put out a call soon for people to be involved at all those different points. Thanks. I believe the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let's see. I'll just start by saying that as you may know, I do meet monthly with the leadership for CEEF, and learned in our meeting last month that they have received 3 proposals for the fall, which for them is a relatively small number. What was interesting is that 2 of the 3 proposals were actually submitted by students, which was very encouraging and exciting news, and that the committee is in the process of interviewing people that submitted the proposals to learn more about the details and once they're ready, then I'll know more about that, and we'll follow the new policy, and you'll be certainly informed as soon as we're ready for that. But and then apparently they also then go back in the spring and put out notice again that they're soliciting and inviting proposals, and that. But for now, again, there are the possibility of 3. The next thing I wanted to mention is that you'll see in your packet a letter from the State Department of Education, very complimentary toward our special education program. I was happy to see that. I wanted you to be aware that the Department of Special Ed in our school district is, from the point of view of the state, is doing very well and is in good order with its paperwork and meeting deadlines and reports. So I just wanted you to see that good news. Regarding the capital improvement plan, I'm happy to say that it's my understanding that at your workshop later this month, which I believe is next week, actually, isn't it?
Next week?
Yes,
Yeah, is it the 15th?
the 15th.
15th.
Tuesday, the 15th.
Yep. We're going to be devoting that meeting to budget preparation, but also to have some time devoted to looking at the capital improvement plan. And I think it's really important that we do this, in part because, at least for me, it's not as clear as I wish it were, the process that we have in terms of formalizing updates to that plan, and then what happens if during the year there is the need for some adjustment to what was thought would be a workable plan. Things will happen, as Michael said earlier in his remarks. Things happen that we can't expect. That's understandable. But then I'd like to know, well, what happens? Is it left to the director of maintenance to make those decisions? Should he be bringing those back to the school board for your approval? Right now, that's a little bit fuzzy, and I think it ought to be clear. My preference is that when you set each year an improvement, update to that plan, that anything that alters that comes back to you, so that you are in agreement and informed of that, rather than to not know about that and then hearing about it. It's just odd. So I know that there are 3 things that, and I actually have a longer list, but there are 3 things that just are examples to me of what I'd like to know more about. One of them is the Pond Cove Playground. I mean, I've heard different stories that it's been on the plan, then it's off the plan, and then I've heard that perhaps the parents were encouraged to start raising monies to support a playground. And that kind of reminds me of the library at Pond Cove, where SEAF got involved in upgrades to the library. And I'm concerned about the left hand knowing what the right hand's doing. And ideally, all of these ideas are funneled in the same direction, and that the board is always aware and involved in these. I mean, we don't want people to start raising money for something that you don't know about or you aren't supporting. So I'm just trying to get clarity on process. And another example might be the generators, or the lack of generators, I should say, at Pond Cove in the middle school. Last week, when we had this windstorm, power was flickering on and off all day. I believe that it was last year that you finally got a generator installed at the high school, which I know is wonderful and well received, but you don't have that currently at the other 2 schools. And it just seems to me that there's a history, I understand, of power going off, and generators would be, I would think, something we ought to talk about. Should they be on the plan? And if they are, should they be moved up higher in terms of the order, so that you don't have to lose school, have kids go home early, disrupt the day for teachers, have to make up the day? I mean, there's a lot of that's not good about unplanned cancellations that could be solved by a generator. So I want to talk about that. And also, I've heard about a long-standing, and some people are saying that it goes back 15 years of thinking about the locker room, the weight room, athletic area, and the need for classroom space in that wing of the building. And it just keeps getting talked about, but I know that right now, in only one meeting I've had with the principal and head of maintenance, it looks as if it's time to really take a good look at that. And I guess it just makes me wonder, I mean, what I'm used to is actually there being a committee, and maybe you have that committee now that looks at this each year, that includes board members, but I'm used to having the fire chief there to look at each building to be sure that they've checked out, there's nothing there that concerns them for safety. I'm used to having teachers give input to their principals about things that are concerning them in their rooms or in the building that we may not know about. And then that is an annual walkthrough of everybody that, on that committee to be sure that they're comfortable with what they see, what they know. I think it might be useful for you all to actually have a walkthrough of the high school with Mr. Shedd and see this area. I mean, personally, I've had that. It catches my attention, especially in terms of safety reasons alone. The weight room, to me, is problematic. And the locker rooms are clearly outdated. I just wouldn't mind maybe even the meeting of the 15th. I mean, maybe before that meeting starts, we could just meet with Mr. Shedd before that meeting and walk through, and then come back here for is it a 7 o'clock meeting?
I believe 6:30, and it would be
6:30?
at the high school.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, if you don't mind, could we do that? For those that can make it, be there half an hour early? So what, 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
So, Mr. Shedd, would that work for you? Yeah. Yeah, would that be workable? Half an hour and enough time, isn't it? Yeah. So 6 o'clock, so maybe we could do that to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about. But anyway, I look forward to knowing more about the plan and then thinking about how to make sure that it's current and that decisions like this don't leave you out of it. I mean, that I want to make sure that you're knowledgeable and
Look
involved.
into Buildings and Grounds Committee, too.
Yep.
Before I leave as a board member, we do get an interim update each year from facilities on what was the CIP budget, what projects were done, which ones might have priorities changed. And there was historically a Buildings and Grounds Committee, but I'm sure you can get the comprehension of that. If it makes sense to broaden it, that could be something the board considers.
Oh, great. That sounds great.
Howard, so in addition to that, we also have a recent history with the Mitchell study, which was a study on which we based our current 10-year CIP plan. And we may want to refer back to that study to see if perhaps we had, whether those things that you just talked about were addressed in that study and whether we just prioritized other things over some of those.
Okay.
Because we had done a comprehensive, I think it was the year before you arrived, Barbara, it was my first year.
It was our first one.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good. And maybe at another date, we also could have you walk around, see this playground at Pond Cove and get a real sense of what's there. I mean, it probably deserves you actually seeing it.
So,
I see.
I'm sorry. I think one of the things that you're talking about, and which is some of what I've been trying to understand when I came out of the board a year ago, has to do with the approach to the capital improvement plan. It sounded like, from what I understood, it was, this is what we need to do to stay where we're at. And so the things that we have buildings, we have windows, we have heating systems, we just have to keep doing that maintenance to stay where we're at. And I think what you're talking about now, which seems sensible, is adding into that. This is also, as we do that, where we need to go, and there's sort of some of a mix in there today, but I don't think it is, has depth to the same degree that you've experienced before. I think that is wise, because it's not only staying where you're at, it's as we're developing these out, what makes sense, what can we do within that capital improvement budget.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention, I didn't realize this until earlier today, but on the 12th of December, no, I know we're in November, but the 12th of December is apparently a time where new board members are sworn in here at the town office, and in the evening, I think at 7 o'clock. And that immediately following that swearing-in ceremony, there's going to be a caucus, so-called, of the board where you talk about serving, joining in on any number of committees. And I just wanted you to have copies of where it stands now, so you could be thinking about which of these you might be, may I give you my copy, ma'am? Which of these you might be willing to serve on for
Saved me a
the,
lot of time.
good, for the next year. Maybe you could just, come thinking about, well, I'm willing to stay on the committee I'm on or take on a new role, but that's what you have. So that's the 12th of December at 7 o'clock here at Town Hall. I also want to mention that I did have a chance today, when I was over at just kind of observing Election Day, which is terribly exciting, that I was able to meet with Greg and have a walkthrough of the gym area. I mean, it's I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's sad to see what happened. As you saw, and I thought a very well-written, informative note from Mr. Shedd, explaining what happened. The water, when the ball broke the protector over this water sprinkler, apparently it dumped about approximately 1,000 gallons of water pretty quickly. I still couldn't figure out why that would damage that entire floor. What I learned today is that there are these stands that they use for volleyball, to hold them in the ground. There are holes there that there are, obviously, they aren't waterproof. The water got, I guess, traveled over there and then traveled underneath along the cement and traveled the entire width and depth of the gym, and then that caused the moisture and the humidity, and then that just buckled up the entire floor. That's why that's how it happened, apparently. As you know, the insurance company's been informed of this. I think Greg said that the job's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150,000. I'm guessing, I can't understand why it wouldn't. It's going to impact our insurance rate. You can count on that. Greg said that he has reviewed options for the sprinkler protectors, and he's ordering a new one that these things look like would withstand a lot of abuse. And so all of the sprinkler heads will be replaced with this new, much beefier looking protector. So that's going to happen. And that they still hope to have the gym ready by early December. I guess that right now the coaches are practicing at various different gyms. And am I right, Jeff, there'll be one home game that will have to be played away, or maybe a couple?
Approximately the first 2 weeks of the preseason.
Okay, thank you. So,
the first home game.
okay, thank you. So that's what we know about that right now. Today was a professional development day for teachers, as you know. Students were home. All I've heard so far are very positive feedback from principals and teachers that it was a productive day, time well spent. I want to acknowledge that we have, for the first time, a professional development committee made up of teachers from all of our schools, working with principals and Kathy, and they all did a great job of designing the day and encouraging people to be involved, and so it worked out very, very well. And I thank everybody for all their hard work and having that be such a success. Next Monday, I'm meeting with a gentleman who works for the safety planning for this area of Maine. He's been reviewing and editing our emergency response plan, and he's ready now. So I'm meeting next Monday with this gentleman and with our police chief and fire chief. And the four of us are going to sit down and walk through all this. And he has questions that need to be answered that they will be more informed than I will. and then we'll go back with that to the administrative group, make sure we're all comfortable, but I just want you to know we haven't dropped the ball on that. That is working its way through, and we'll have that revised, I hope, by winter. So that's basically it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to item 6, new business. May I have a motion for item A, please?
I move that we approve the Cape Elizabeth High School Model UN World Affairs Council trip to Boston University Model UN Conference, February 10th through the 12th of 2017.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. May I have a motion for item B, please?
I move we approve the Cape Elizabeth High School Model UN World Affairs Council trip to Boston College Model UN Conference, March 17th through 19th, 2017.
A second?
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item C, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the Cape Elizabeth High School Model UN World Affairs Council trip to Dartmouth College Model UN Conference, April 7th through the 9th of 2017.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item D, may I have a motion, please?
I move we adopt the school board goals for 2016-2017.
I second.
I would just like to briefly update the public. The school board met in sort of a mini retreat with our new interim superintendent in early September to take a look at what the priorities for this upcoming school year were. And we were able to really zone in on 6 areas. And I know we all want to get home, but I am going to read them, and I'll read them quickly. Last time I kind of talked about what they were, and we worked on some language together, so I felt that it was important for the public. So number 1 was our superintendent search. We want to recruit and select a highly qualified, experienced district-level leader who is the right fit for Cape Elizabeth. Not listed in this goal is, of course, our hope to find somebody who is here for a longer term and not making this a stepping stone. Number 2, K-12 alignment. This seems wordy, but it felt really important. We want to establish and document consistent, coherent, transparent learning goals in all instructional areas, both horizontally, which means common learning expectations across a grade level or course, regardless of teacher, and vertically, which means each grade builds on the work of the prior grade and all curriculum is aligned to a set of K-12 graduation standards, and develop a district calendar to support both consistent and uninterrupted student in-class time, as well as time for teacher growth and collaboration, and keep professional development focused on these goals. Number 3, climate and culture. We want to give high priority to clear and regular communication within the district, with parents, and with the community at large, with emphasis on transparency, relationship building, and trust building. Number 4, proficiency-based education. Continue to develop for 2017-2018 implementation at the freshman level. Clear learning goals in English learning arts, math, science, and social studies, and documentation procedures, including report cards, to support this implementation and transition to standards-based diploma in the 2021-22 school year. Number 5, evaluation system. Support and monitor the implementation of the new teacher evaluation system, review the integrity of the system, and solicit teacher and principal feedback. And number 6, resource allocation. Prepare a budget that supports district goals, conduct negotiations with the CEEA, which is the Cape Elizabeth Education Association, based on positive regard and fiscal responsibility. Further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for indulging. Item E, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the 2016-2017 administrative, athletic, and co-curricular personnel nominations for special ed, district certification, high school, as listed out in this evening's agenda.
I second?
Discussion?
I had asked this before, but I know historically the practice has been typically the budget or the district fund the head coach and assistant coaching positions. And I know there was some demand for some incremental coaching skills for the indoor track. But one thought or comment I had is, is this position just a one-time position just for this year, and then based on the next budget cycle, it would typically be just head coach and assistant coaches for track?
Maybe Mr. Thorak could help us.
All right, so if you could repeat that, because I wasn't quite clear on a couple.
Well, I know typically the school budget would fund a head coach or assistant coach, and then, for, in soccer, if you wanted a goalie coach or extra, that's kind of outside of the budget, it would be booster funded. And I was just curious on the indoor track coach, the new position, is more just like an additional assistant coach?
Correct. It is an assistant coach, and with indoor track, I think it's a little unique, and it's a smaller booster group, and the logistics of the indoor track are a little challenging because it's a beautiful day today, may not be that way in a couple of weeks, so we're kind of enclosed in the confines of the school. So we may have a group doing stairs with a coach in one end of the school, another coach in the gym, working with a group of students, and maybe in one of the hallways as well. We thought there was a strong need to have someone in that weight room working with the students as well, because there are a large number of students in there. So this person would help supervise and teach kids proper technique, and it would have a zero impact on the athletic budget or in the school budget. The coaches saw a great need to have someone here that was qualified, and thought that they could reduce some of their stipend to help supplement the need for another assistant coach.
Would you foresee that funding model going forward?
The coaches taking a reduction in their stipend? I think it's not uncommon. I'm seeing it more often now. I think the demands of coaching are so strong and require so much time, especially if you are teaching. We are seeing coaches now kind of split some of that and to just reduce some of that workload. So the Alpine was another example of where that's happening this year. And with younger coaches, sometimes new families, so the time commitment is a little challenging as well.
Jeff, I had another question about the stipends, and I want to apologize. Usually we try and field out these questions beforehand, before business meetings, so that you can do a little research and prepare. So this isn't a trick question in any regard. It's lapse on my time, but I noticed in looking through the stipend schedule for the hockey varsity coaches that for the boys varsity hockey coach is, their stipend is almost $1,000 more than the girls varsity stipend, and yet their assistant coaches are the same for each, and I was wondering if you could just speak to that for me.
So when you'll see the difference in stipend amounts, a lot of times it may be if a coach has been working with, employed with the school system for 10 or more years, then there's an increase in a 1% increase in their stipend.
Hey,
So
that just stood out.
So it may look a little funny not knowing, because I'm not sure if that's listed on that document or not, but there are, fortunately in our case, we have a lot of coaches that have been working in the district for more than 10 years, so
Okay,
shows a lot of consistency there too.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your help.
Good. You bet.
Thanks, Jeff. And I just also want to say one thing, for those coaches who are willing to lower their personal stipend refund in order to expand the opportunity for someone else to pitch in is commendable. I appreciate that creative and personal skin in the game, so to speak, that they're putting in. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Item F, may I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the co-curricular job description for the K-12 Professional Development Committee member.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
If we could maybe have a little background on
Yeah.
the need.
Well, I'm sorry, Kathy's not here, and I have no idea. Is this for a certain member or for anybody who's, for all members?
It's the job description for any member.
I think it's new to this. Is it a new position in the collective bargaining, or is this just an update of an existing job description?
No, I think it's a new, the
Yeah.
Professional Development Committee was established this year for the first time.
Okay,
So I think that you wanted to have a job description to be clear about what their responsibility is, and that I think that there was going to be an amount of money paid each member. I think it might have been $500 each for the year, but that's not part of this motion. It's really just to, I think, to approve the job itself, and that Kathy wrote that. It might have been presented at your last meeting, I'm not sure, as a draft.
I feel like we have seen this because we were talking about the 12 months per year and the difference between that and the school year. This does look like any member.
and I feel like we were going to get more information on that,
Pardon me?
the 12 months versus the school year piece.
Yeah, perhaps there's an assumption of some summer work before school opens or something, and if folks are willing to take that on for us, I say, great.
Right.
Yeah. This adds, I think, to the transparency of the role, so I applaud the effort to have it out there, at least for people to know what the expectations are on both ends.
Are people feeling unclear? Do they want more information, or are there people?
You guys bring it back at the next
We're
meeting.
we're able to table this motion and get information from Kathy Stankard before we move ahead? Okay.
And what is the information you're looking for, so I can have it?
I think just a little more background. It feels like we're doing this for transparency reasons, but I think just having a little more background about why we're establishing this position how we've defined it, and I think people want a little clarity around the language where it says 12 months. Am I capturing people's?
Yeah, it's a job description for committee members of the new professional development committee. I think the main thing, Howard, it says terms of employment, 12 months per year with compensation in accordance with the fee structure. Just more in terms of if you're on this committee and you get called in July to come in and do professional development planning, we just make sure everyone's on the same page. Is it
Right.
more
Very good.
compensation is in accordance with the fee, and then, time commitment is based on, so everyone's on the same page.
Right, got it, thank you.
Great, so we will table that and bring it back next month. Moving on to item G, please. May I have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move that we approve following school board policies as presented for second reading. KCD, public gifts, donations to the schools. KCDR, public gifts, donations to the schools procedure. And JB, transgender students.
A second?
Discussion?
Let me just do a little bit of quick explanation. We looked at this last month in a first read. There were not questions about any further amendments to this. It's been a long process writing this. I'd like to thank Heather and John and Elizabeth for joining us for a lot of the discussions as well. This recognizes all of the potential gifts that could be coming to the school, either as outright gifts, as grants, however they may appear to us. Certainly, we are a huge beneficiary of the efforts of the Cape Elizabeth Education Foundation, in addition to our parents' associations and other potential grants. So for those listening, our option was to really look at this as a gift acceptance procedure on the part of the board. And for clarity, for those listening, in our procedures and policy, we're saying that our superintendent can accept gifts on our behalf of value of $10,000 or less, unless they fall in a few certain categories that we felt were important to bring for board acceptance of those gifts. And if you indulge me just a second, so the superintendent may accept up to $10,000 unless they substantially impact the school unit's missions and values, governance, operating budget, equitable allocation of resources, or matters of educational policy. So a potential impact gift may include, but isn't limited to, a gift that involves additional significant operational maintenance or installation costs that we would bear, a gift that requires facility improvements, renovations, alterations, or additions to our existing school buildings or grounds, a gift that requires or creates a need to hire new faculty or staff, a gift that requires or creates a need for the school unit or budget to provide additional compensation to existing faculty, staff, or a gift that significantly modifies an established curriculum or educational policy. It was our sense that anything that would fall into that range of potential impact is something that the board would want to be aware of and applaud and weigh in on and accept a wonderful gift that's offered to come our way. So that's sort of the meat and potatoes to the gift acceptance policy. Any questions on?
And Barbara, if I'm remembering correctly, it also brings our policy in line with state law and our fiduciary responsibility.
Exactly. We've had a lot of input from council saying, in terms of statutory requirements, your board really should be accepting all gifts. But she felt, after a lot of discussion, that we could ask our superintendent on our behalf to accept those that would fall sort of outside of that umbrella, and also the many, many smaller gifts that come our way in a regular way that he or she could nicely accept for us. We do ask that we be informed of all gifts on a regular way so we can acknowledge those generous donors in our community. But in terms of the day-to-day operational piece, we are happy to designate that out, and that met approval of council. Thank you.
So I'll just add briefly, what we're doing with this policy is bringing the board into compliance with our obligation to accept gifts, and we've clarified our process for doing that, partly by delegating significant authority to the superintendent to do that on our behalf, and reserving our authority for things that may significantly impact the school district solely for board approval, and also clarifying our internal procedures as these come through our system so that we're aware of all those impacts. So thanks, Barbara, for your great work.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the policy committee. I know that you guys spent an enormous amount of time and effort to make this right. Thank you on behalf of, I think, the board for that hard work.
Thank you. And I would just mention to the superintendent, if he'd be so kind as to bring back to the administrative team the implication of these changes, both for their processing of grant recommendations and on down to staff, so they're just aware of the role we're seeking to play in acceptance of gifts. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, and then the transgender student policy we looked at also. That language was completely developed through legal counsel. We read through it. We thought we had a lot of questions. We answered those. At our first reading, it was asked if Jeff Shedd might carry that back and speak to some high schoolers. He's here and can speak to that, but he told us at our last meeting that in fact they greatly applaud this policy, find it timely and helpful, and strongly encourage our approval. Again, for those listening, it simply is a way to acknowledge the special challenges sometimes of our transgender student population with a big protocol move of asking for one-on-one meetings with a guidance counselor to help create a personal plan, essentially, for how they can best and most comfortably operate in our schools. Any decisions about participation in athletics, those that are approved by the MPA, would be going through a committee designed for that purpose at the state level. That's outside of our bailiwick to make choices on. We totally would control co-curriculars, I guess, that would fall within the walls of the school, but anything where there's athletic competition with other districts, that goes through a very, frankly, progressive committee that the MPA has established exactly for that purpose. So this is all clarified in policy now.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Jeff, could you, if you don't mind, just sort of share with us the reception of this policy at the school?
Sure. So Barbara really accurately stated it. I think about a week after this was last discussed by the policy committee, Kenny McGrath, who was unable to be here tonight, but who is the head of our student government, led a discussion of the students and the student government about this policy, and they were very enthusiastic about the school board taking a position on this. They also recognize, and I talked with them about, the fact that this is largely based on a Maine Supreme Judicial Court ruling that this is sort of the law anyway, although the policy goes into more details about procedural issues and about record keeping and how you sort of address those issues. Our GSTA group graduated most of its leadership last year, actually, so they are really in the process of kind of reorganizing themselves. I talked to Kevin St. Jar, who's the new advisor to the GSTA, who has talked to individual students, though they haven't had many formal organized meetings this year. They are getting themselves organized. And he assured me, and it wasn't a surprise, that the GSTA group was also completely on board with this idea. So I would say full support from the student body.
Wonderful. I'm always about the nothing about us without us rule, so really exciting to hear that work.
I'm excited to hear that the MPA is taking this kind of progressive role.
Very progressive role, kind of shockingly progressive role, frankly. But I was really pleased to read what they've been up to. Yeah.
Before we move on, I didn't jump in, but I would like to thank the policy committee again, not only for the work on receiving gifts and grants, which was sensitive and time intensive and really came out where I think it needed to be. And so I really appreciate everybody's work on this. And I think, every policy that we work on is important. And the transgendered policy is no different. It's really important, sensitive work. So thank you for that. All those in favor? Thank you. Item H, please. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we appoint Elizabeth Seifries and Heather Altenberg as board representatives for the 2017-2018 calendar committee.
Second.
Discussion?
I just want to thank you guys for taking up that mantle. It's important work in this transition time. We have a lot of things to address through the calendar, and I don't think that we could have chosen two better people to take on that role. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
All those in favor? Thank you. Item 7, committee reports. We've heard about policy.
I have a little more.
Okay.
Policy Committee is now taking on a revision on bullying and cyberbullying prevention. Before, it used to be called bullying and cyberbullying, like, yay.
How to?
Now it's bullying and cyberbullying prevention. Language came in this summer that mentioned that a stakeholder group had met and talked about some protocols and procedures that had been found to be very effective in bullying, cyberbullying prevention. And it sounded like it was a suggestion. Just last week, the language came in saying that the Department of Education feels very strongly about these proposed modifications, so strongly, in fact, that once we adopt it, we must file it with the department for approval. So they're not messing around. This is, in their mind, serious, high-level work. We had a great meeting last week. Several administrators were there, Jeff, Kelly, Doug, and Mike, and Jessica from special education, as well as the policy committee members. We got through the meat of a lot of the policy. We still have the administrative protocols and follow-up reporting protocols to go through with a fine-tooth comb. We're going to be discussing current practice compared to some of the suggested practice, and hope to bring a first reading to you in December. Thank you.
Spurlock? Any news?
Oh, so, Spurlock Building Committee is going to meet actually tomorrow, and we're sort of moving towards a potentially joint library, historical society, school usage. It's not exactly clear how that's going to come out. The Historical Society appears to wish to remain sort of independent in its proposal, and we're meeting tomorrow night to sort of discuss where things are at. I'm encouraged that we may end up with something that really maximizes public usage of that space, but to be determined. Anything to add?
No, we're still waiting.
So we've been,
But may I just join in on this topic for a second? I've heard from town manager that the town will be looking for financial support from whichever groups might use this facility to make, improvements, and which I understand. But when I think about just the list I mentioned earlier today of things that need to be looked at for capital improvement, I really am a bit cautious that we don't overcommit to a building that we don't have to have, when we have 3 buildings that we do have to have that need attention. I mean, I have no idea what we're talking about to upgrade and refine the Spring building, but if it's a lot of money, it would cause me to just really to pause and say, is this really what we should, the best use of the money that we have for schools, to be putting it into a 4th building that is maybe desirable, but it's not necessarily necessary. So I just hope that sooner than later we find out if we do sign up for some kind of a shared use of this building, what does it really mean to the 2 or 3 groups that share it, so that we are not going in, half-cocked.
So I got to address some of the discussion that's been around exactly that topic, and it's not quite clear exactly where it's going to come out. Part of this has to do with if you're going to put that building into public use again, there's a certain level of minimum cost that's going to need to be borne. And eventually that's going to be borne by the town, whether it's through the school department or through the town, because you have to do certain things to make that building usable again. So that's got to, if not, there's going to be certain costs to tear it down and get rid of it. There's no zero cost option there. And so then the question and how that would be allocated if it was only school is still not clear. And that would be based upon a recommendation of the committee to the town council, depending on how you do that. The question beyond that, just making it habitable and usable, and any fit out needed for what you wanted to use the building for, that was where there was some discussions, is sort of what the timing and costs of that were, and that would be as much as possible looking to be borne by the users of the facility. So there was sort of two categories of that, because like I said, there's no zero cost option for using that building. There's a lot, some part of it has to do with whether or not you need to put in parking, because currently it doesn't have parking. Parking is for the library, and if it was a school, you might not, maybe. It's unclear. And there's some costs for some environmental remediation and some others, I think some other heating and cooling and other maintenance costs you just need to put in place to use it. It's going to have to go through the town planning board for a new use anyway, because right now it's not really approved for use other than as a library, and even then it doesn't have parking attached to it. So any new use is going to go through the planning. So we're still at that stages where there's a piece that you have to spend to have the building usable for a public purpose, and then fit out and other things beyond that. It's still to be determined by what can be borne by the users, which would then go into a recommendation to go forward. So
I think once those costs become more clear,
yeah, well,
the board would need to know about that.
I think the committee is thinking about the costs of usability versus any fit out in slightly different buckets, and I think appropriately so.
Thank you. I can give a brief update on calendar committee, and if I miss something, Heather, will you help me out? Okay. The calendar committee has been able to meet twice. We've had very, very positive discussions, and really looking at maximizing student in-class time while prioritizing some consistent K-12 professional development, so it really aligns with our board goals. And there are a couple of ways that we are going at this, and they're kind of irrevocably linked. And the first one is talking about professional development. Right now, the committee feels pretty strongly about offering teachers K-12 consistently, twice a month, in either an early release or late arrival professional development time. That would be K-12, so that there would be different professional development times for different schools, but there would be very predictable, consistent professional development time. And that time, we're looking at minimizing impact to student day. So, that later release time for the early release, and we're still kind of talking about what that late arrival time might be and how that works. But that's one part of the plan that seems to have a lot of support with teachers and with the parents that we've been able to talk to. That would eliminate any full-day professional development. That would eliminate a lot of need for teachers to be pulled out of their classrooms and have substitute teachers in there, which was a concern that we heard from a lot of teachers and parents. That was an exciting thing because, teachers in classrooms with students is really what we want. It would not mess around with the days before the school year, because those days felt very valuable to teachers to help prepare and set up and get their classrooms ready to go. Coupled with that, we are talking also about moving parent-teacher conferences out of the school day. It is not the purview of the committee to change the structure of conferences, and that's up to, the building principals and their teachers. They each have their own structure for how they run conferences, and this committee isn't really talking about changing, how they do conferences, more the date and the time. So moving it out of the school day, again, we're prioritizing that student in-class time. We're making parent-teacher conferences much more available to parents. And at the same time, we're able to offer these twice monthly. So this is by no means a done deal. We're things that are still a lot of work to be done, but that feels like the direction that the committee is taking. Heather?
Can I add to that? In regards to the twice a month professional development chunks that we were talking about, two of the, I think, very important pieces of information is that the teachers feel like if they're regular and there's not such a large distance between the two times that they get together, they can hit the ground running and they're not wasting time trying to remember what they had done the time before, and they can just get started, and the time that they do have is much more effective. And then also the idea with having, the whole district have that time together with this idea of proficiency-based diploma coming up, possibly allocating the first professional development period to the month to a K-12 organization, and then the second one to, across the board, like what we had mentioned in our goals, and making it very consistent and very regular so that we are very aligning that with our goal of what we hope to achieve.
Yeah.
And as Elizabeth said, there was a lot of positive feedback and interest and passion behind it, I think. Very well received.
Right.
But yes, still a lot of discussions to be had. Definitely not at the end of the discussion.
When's your next meeting?
Well, I have it written down in upcoming announcements.
November
It is November 16th.
Do you meet every week?
We're trying to get in 3 meetings before December so that, we can try to have a version of the calendar before, before Christmas, so that the board can possibly see it in January.
Yes. Kathy has taken a stab at creating a draft.
Right. Kathy Stankert is going to try to create a draft. And there's been a lot of, I feel like we're taking some really exciting, positive steps. There's great energy there, and lay the groundwork for future discussions.
And there's been a lot of comparison with other districts, how they've done it, and a lot of information for us to look at so that as we analyze this, we are taking that into consideration.
Sounds great.
Have you touched on start times at all yet?
We haven't, I think that's going to be a larger, longer discussion than than this group is able to tackle. I think that the board would need to get together and have that discussion, as well as make it a kind of a district priority to have that discussion in the time frame that we have this time.
Because I still think the group that you have assembled will have a valuable starting point for some of that discussion. As I said before, I still think it's a question of when you make that shift, because the data is in. It's the cheapest thing you can do to improve achievement and health for students, is to change the start times. It takes a while to get there, but I think it's really going to be, it's still a question of when and not if. And so, as you have a calendar committee assembled, I think it's something that it's beginning the discussion, I think is important, so.
That would really expand the focus of this committee, though, so.
I think identifying what the next steps are to make that happen, coming out of that is fine, but not starting, I think will slow us down.
And I think that's something that also probably should come out of another school board retreat where we have maybe identified that in goals as a board. Okay, any other committee reports?
No, I think we're all done on that one.
Yeah, I think we are.
Oh, no, I just wanted to reiterate that we do have our next school board workshop, Finance Committee, meeting next Tuesday night, November 15th at 6 o'clock. We're going to have a walk through the building, and then at 6:30, we will have a formal finance workshop, and we will be, again, concentrating on the CIP and the upcoming budget process. For those who may have missed it an hour and a half ago.
That was skipping ahead to announcements, so I'm just going to move to item 8. Are there any school board agenda requests? Okay, moving on to number 9. Oh,
If it's not on the calendar committee, I think we need to talk about start times.
announcements of upcoming meetings. Joe mentioned our November 15th Finance Committee and workshop. November 14th, we have the auditor's report at 6:30 PM here in Town Hall. That is a joint meeting with Town Council. And November 16th is Calendar Committee at 3:30 in the Middle School Library Learning Commons.
And I would add that our usual policy committee date of the first Tuesday of the month conflicts with a concert for several of our attendees, so we negotiated a change date. I apologize, but we'll meet on December 8th at 8 in the morning.
And do we want to talk about our teacher appreciation Society?
That is next. So on Thursday, November 17th at 3:30 in the afternoon, the school board is hosting a gratitude event for all teaching staff in Cape Elizabeth, which would include food services and ed techs and teachers, bus drivers, sports support staff. We are holding that event in the Pond Cove Middle School cafetorium, and it's a drop-in. Come partake of some seasonal treats, and the school board will be there to serve everybody and just chat and say thank you. Any other? All right. Item 10. May I have a motion? Michael, would you like to make?
I would love to. I move that we adjourn.
A second.
We lost
All
a lot of
those in
our
favor?
audience
Totally in
minutes ago
favor.
and polls closed.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Coming across.